There's a word that describes something that God does that basically I don't think it's necessarily a biblical word. It's something that man has ascribed to it to describe this event. It's what we see and what we've been reading the past few weeks in Genesis of what is going on. Well, what would you describe it with Joseph being sold into slavery, Joseph ending up in Egypt, going through what he went through in Egypt, and finally ending up in this position that he can store up this food and that his family is coming back to him to get food? What word would we use to describe how God is working, doing all that? Providence. And there's no doubt that is what is happening here. Is God is, you could say, working behind the scenes. I guess he always works behind the scenes because it's not visible to us. God is bringing about his will in doing what he wants to accomplish, but not overriding the free will of man. Man is still doing what they choose to do. When his brothers chose to, sell him, were they doing that for the good of themselves or the good of him? No, they were acting in their own selfish, sinful interest, right? But God is still using that to bring about his purpose. Another reason I bring that up is just we can never say for sure in our lives what just might be circumstance and what might be, God working. We can't say because we can't pinpoint it. As we get older, you can look back at times in your life and you can go, ooh, when this happened, I didn't see it then, but in the long run, that was working out for my betterment. And you might not even thought it at the time. It could have been something, not as extreme as Joseph being sold into slavery, but you can think of, I'm sure, of hard times you've had in your life. Things you're like, at the time, and I was praying about this, I was praying for the opposite outcome. But now looking back, 10, 15, 20, 30 years later, I'm like, yeah, that worked out. That worked out for the best. So all we're going to bring up is to try to encourage us that no matter what you're going through, if you're going through stuff that is rough, I know Moffat used to always say, when things are really chaotic in your life, there's probably things going on that you're not aware of. And just to always, be faithful, don't lose your faith, just, head down and work through it and do the best that you can. And actually, you might not see the true benefit for years and years and years later. So that, goes on. That's what's happening with Joseph here. And Joseph's, on the upswing side of this now. He's gone through the really tough times of being in Egypt, and things are going better for him now. His family is not aware of the part they have played and what they are playing in this. So in 42, last week, what kind of happened? What's the general overview of what happened in 42? His brothers had to come back and see him, or come see him, right? Not knowing who he was. So there's a famine in their land. They've heard there's corn in Egypt, so they go down there. Who all goes?
Everybody but the youngest.
Everybody but the youngest. And we know why. Why does the youngest not go?
Daddy wanted him to stay home.
Daddy wanted to keep him because why is he special to him?
He was afraid something happened. Like
Right, he didn't. He was afraid something was going to happen to him. But like Dave was saying, it is the only other son of his favorite wife and also his youngest. Right? Am I right about that? It's his youngest, right? It's his youngest son too. So he says, y'all can all go, but Benjamin's going to stay back. So they go. They interact with Joseph, not knowing it is Joseph. Joseph, does he reveal himself to him? No. Right, he accused them. He takes out maybe a little bit of vengeance, because what did he do with them? Right, he didn't just give them corn and send them on their way. Yeah, he put them in jail for 3 days. He speaks roughly to them through a translator. He makes them afraid, accuses them of being spies, all this stuff. And then when he does send them back, he puts some requirements on them. What did he require?
One had to stay there.
They don't see it.
Yeah, he goes, okay, you told me, because he's asking pointed questions. How's your dad? Is there any other brothers? Things he knew the answer to, and they're answering truthfully. He's okay. If you're not spies, I think you're spies. Falsely accusing him, but if I think you're spies, prove yourself by bringing that youngest son back, because he knew that was going to be a tall task, right, to get done. And he also holds one brother behind. Who did he hold behind? Simeon. Did y'all talk about anything about of why it might have been Simeon he picked?
Simeon's the one
Simeon was one of them, but also Simeon seems to be kind of more with Dinah. Yeah, he's the one that went back and slew that. Was a ringleader and slewing and killing that whole town, right? Over his sister Dinah. He seems to be a little more of an aggressive one. So maybe we don't know. It's not said, but he pulls. He said, "I'm going to hold on to Simeon. Y'all go back and bring back." So they go back. Let me see how far we don't confuse 43 or 42.
He set up enough food for them to eat for a while.
He did send them back food and
their money.
and he put their money back in. And when did they find out they had their money back in their bag?
They got to the end.
Yes. Yeah, somewhere along their journey back at the end, right? And how did that make them feel? Did they think, "Oh, good, we got our money back"?
No.
Oh no, they were scared to death. They're like, "Oh, this is not going to work out." He already thinks we're spies. Now he's going to think we're thieves, and so
That day they would have returned and brought the money back instead of just going on.
Yeah, you don't know, but possibly, right? They maybe could have appointed one. Here's the money, take it back, But they're probably maybe thinking we got to go on back and get the food back home. So we don't know what all's going through their mind. We're not told. What else happened in the chapter 42?
But it says, after he was mean to him and everything, that he turned away from him and wept.
It was hard on him. It wasn't like he was necessarily relishing it. He might have been doing it to prove a point or to teach him a lesson. But it wasn't like you always hear the line your parent tells you when they're getting ready to spank you, like it hurts me more than it hurts you, and I never believed that at all. When I was a child, but maybe as an adult, maybe Joseph is exacting some punishment, but he's not relishing it. He's not
Like you said,
enjoying it.
15 to 20 years since he'd seen them. So
Right.
he was overcome.
And it gets down when they finally get back and tell their dad what's going on. How does their dad react? Yeah, he is like, no way. I mean, it almost with that answer, he's almost willing to sacrifice Simeon, right? He says, no, it's not going to happen. He goes, and then, but somebody steps up and makes an agreement. Who steps up at the end of the chapter there?
Reuben.
And what does Reuben say?
He says if he's going to bring him back, he'll kill his two sons.
He offers up his sons and says, like I said, if they're my bond, they're my surety. If I don't bring him back, you can kill my son. That's how serious of an oath he's making with him. And then the last response is in verse 38 says, this is his final reaction, or Jacob's final reaction. He said, "My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead," speaking of Joseph, that's what he believes, "and he is left alone," speaking of Benjamin. "If mischief befall him in the way which you go, then you shall bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave." So he just says, if anything happens to Benjamin, it's going to kill me. In our figure of speech, right? It will kill me. And so he's just, at the end of 42, he's just adamant it's not going to happen. Anything else in 42? Okay. Let's read, someone that's going to read 43, let's read, bless you, Zach. Let's read all the way through verse 10.
And the famine was sore in the land, and it came to pass when they had eaten up the corn which they had brought out of Egypt, their father said unto them, "Go again, buy us a little food." And Judah spoke to him, saying, "The man did solemnly protest unto us, saying, You shall not see my face, except your brother be with you. If thou wilt send our brother with us, we will go down and buy thee food. But if thou wilt not send him, we will not go down. For the man said unto us, You shall not see my face, except your brother be with you. And Israel said, Wherefore dealt ye so ill with me, and to tell the man whether ye had yet a brother? And they said, The man asked us greatly of our state and of our kindred, saying, Is your father yet alive? Have you another brother? And we told him, according to the turn of this word, could we certainly know that he would say, Bring your brother down? And Judah said unto Israel, his father, Send the lad with me, and we will rise and go, then we shall live and not die, both we and thou, and also our little ones. We will be surely for him, I will be surely for him, and my hand shall thou require him. If I bring him not unto thee, and set him before thee, then let me bear the blame forever. For except we had lingered surely now, we had returned this second time.
Okay, so they come back from bringing their food, and they're staying in their country for a while. So they have they've had the discussion, about they need to go back, and their father is against it. So they're staying. They stayed home. They've eaten the food. The food is running out, and now Jacob, what does he say to his sons? Yeah, we're going to have to go back. But they still have a big, huge problem, and now Judah speaks up. And what does Judah say? You've already said we can't take Benjamin. There's no point in us going back without taking him, because the man said, speaking of Joseph, if you don't bring Benjamin, you're liars, you're spies, and you're not getting anything. We don't know how long they lingered here, but it's been a while. And actually, Judah brings it up in verse 10. He goes, we've already kind of stayed too long. He goes, the man was expecting us back, and we should have been back by now, and we haven't even left. What else do you see in there?
Simeon's still there.
Say again?
Simeon's still back there.
Yeah, Simeon's like going, he might be thinking, you kind of think what's going through his mind, if he was kind of an aggressive one, and he was kind of one of the ringleaders that ended up selling Joseph into slavery, he's got time, however much time it's been now, to kind of ponder, because where's he at? He's the one in slavery. He's the one in prison, and they're going, this is my brother. Now, there's nothing like building empathy than going through the thing yourself. So he can understand now, he's getting to feel and experience what he made Joseph feel and experience.
It sounds more like he's in house arrest, not in a prison.
Possibly so. I'm sure Joseph is taking a little bit better care of him than the way Joseph was treated, because Joseph was sold into slavery, and then Potiphar's house was thrown in the dungeon, and then became over the dungeon where he interpreted the baker and the butler's dream. So probably he's having a little easier go, but still, no matter how bad or good the accommodations might have been, you're still a foreigner in a strange land. And if Judah realizes at home, back with his family, that it's been a little bit too long, we should have been back, what do you think Simeon is thinking? He's probably going, hey, they should have been back by now. This is probably not going to go well for me.
It's kind of strange that they don't even mention Simeon in the.
You don't even talk about Simeon.
Jacob or even Judah, like, go get our other brother too,
What did we talk about? What do we see this reoccurring problem we see in this family? Favoritism. Because they all show back up after, again, leaving Simeon behind, and what's Jacob's concern? Benjamin. You're not taking Benjamin. Y'all can go back. Simeon can stay in prison, but you're not going to send Benjamin. Can you fit the other brothers be like going, come on, man. He goes, we're going back and forth to Egypt. We're going into prison. That guy's going to kill us when we go back, and you're worried about Benjamin, who's never left the house?
Well, he says in 36, in chapter 42, he says, you have bereaved me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more.
Right, he only refers.
Not Simeon.
Right, he only, when he says his children, he's only talking about, it reads like 2 of the 12.
Yeah.
And so it's all that's going on. Is, again, we've talked about that, a bunch, but the favoritism,
He also asked him, why did you tell him you had a brother?
he's looking for any excuse. And he's like, again, when in the discussions with Judah, he's like, why would you treat me so badly? Why would you tell him I had another son? And they're like, how are we going to know? He was going to ask us to bring him back. He asked us pointed questions. How is your father? Do you have any other brothers? We had no reason not to answer, honestly.
Because they're asking somebody who already knows the answers. Lying would have been
Bad. Because if they would have lied, potentially, theoretically speaking, Joseph could have pointed out some way, figuring that he did know, right? And then you're like, well, now we look like spies because here we are in this foreign country lying.
That's normal questions that you would even ask today.
anybody, how's your father?
Yeah, you wouldn't even
Any
expect-
other brothers or sisters?
You wouldn't even expect anything by it, right? You would just answer those questions. There's no need. I know some people, like I said, they'll just lie to you about almost anything, but there's no reason to even, there's nothing to gain at that time to lie about that. Why would you cover that up? Not like Abraham and Sarah or something, this is my sister. I mean, that was a lie, but he had a reason for it. There would be no reason to this lie until you get here, we'll bring him back, and you're like, they knew his dad, they knew their dad, they probably went, oh, that's gonna be hard.
You're accused of being spies, you wanna have that, we're grounded here, this is where we're at, you wanna make it, as many facts as possible to prove you're not there for
Right.
incorrect reasons.
Right. Again, because they were easy. They could have. They had their way. They could have found out, right?
It just seems weird that they ate up all their corn and everything. It seemed like they were in a rush to go back to get it, they just didn't like it.
No, I don't. I really think the only thing I can. I mean, there's all we don't know. Me thinking. I think that this discussion here at the end of 42 was so severe that they knew that they couldn't go back without Benjamin, and Jacob has put his foot down that he is not going to go. That doesn't get resolved until they run out of food again, and now they have no other option. And Jacob's like, "Y'all need to go back," and they're like, "Yeah, we can. You have this lingering issue. We haven't resolved this. We can't go back unless we take Benjamin."
And how long they wait, and they haven't paid for that corn.
Yeah, nothing's
It'd
going
be worse
to.
going back, you would think.
Whenever there's a problem, time usually doesn't fix it, right? If that problem is severe and it's there, it just lingers. And so whenever you come back to it with whoever you got to address it with, whether it be a day, or whether it be a year, or whether it be 10 years, that problem is still there. It needs to be fixed. Some people think like, and I'm probably guilty of this, let's let that go, right? And we just won't talk about it. And surely time will fix it. Well, guess what? I'm 50. And like, I've got problems in my past that haven't been fixed yet because they haven't been addressed, right? So you have those that until they're just sat down and you hash it out, they're always going to be there.
First thing is an ultimatum back to the father. We'll go, but the only way we're gonna go is you send the boy with us.
Yeah.
I wouldn't tell my dad that.
Right. I mean, and I wouldn't either. But at this point, Judah's thinking again. I'm my brain into his. I got nothing to lose. If you're sending us back there, we're going to go get killed. They're going to kill us all.
We're either gonna die here.
So unless you give him to me now, I'm not going.
I might leave the house and not show up down there.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I'd rather do that than tell my dad I ain't going.
I ain't going, right?
Well, it's interesting because that's kind of where he finally, there to let it go, is the argument changes from if we don't go to buy you food, talking to Jacob, we're dead, you're dead.
We're all dead.
You're starving to death. And then it comes back down later on in, I think, 8-9, he changes the argument. Benjamin's dead if we stay here. Benjamin's possibly dead if we go. He's dead one way or the other.
Yeah.
You might as well let him go because the outcome's going to be the same.
Reminds me of the lepers, that were in the town, the city when they were being seized, right? They go, there's death in the town. We're all going to starve to death here. If we go give ourselves to the enemy, they might kill us. We're just going to be dead anyway, but maybe perhaps they'll give us food, right? So their situation is dire, so they're going to have to do something. It's also interesting, I thought about, because at the end of 42, who's making the negotiations to take him back there? Reuben. You don't hear nothing about Reuben. Reuben don't even talk. Now it's Judah. Judah's like, this is what has to happen. Judah has stepped up for what a reason, because Reuben offered his kids, and then what did Judah do in verse 9?
It's his way.
Yeah, he said he put it on me.
So it is some 30 minutes.
Yeah. So he's speaking of, and also in I had a thing about Judah. Okay. Oh, about chapter 37, verse 26. And this is back when they were selling Joseph originally. Judah spoke up and he said, and Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood?" He's speaking of it. It almost sounds like, Simeon seemed to be more of a ringleader. Let's have this done. And Judah perhaps wasn't as into it as his other brothers was. He's like, this is what we're going to do. And so now Judah again is negotiating here to go back and again talk to his brother, who he doesn't know that yet of who it is. Anything else?
Looks like a big problem in their family is that they to why it becomes so easy to accuse one another of different things. It's just something I'm picking up on. It's like, see the interaction continue.
It's definitely, I mean, for sure, again, to me, what stands out is the favoritism, right? Is this like, it's all just kind of like bargaining, right? Well, if you do this and that, and I'll give you my children and my life and his life, and we'll leave Simeon behind, and there's just all, it just seems unnatural. Well, I guess as a New Testament calls it, without natural affection. If you had that family bond within your family unit for everybody, it seemed like these discussions would have been a little different.
Yep.
So it does kind of give you the idea of like almost like a business arrangement, like we'll sacrifice this division to keep this going. It's just kind of bizarre.
It's causing all sorts of issues. I mean, you do a parallel between the church. You treat the church just like a business. What kind of issues are you going to come across?
Yeah.
Big ones.
Big ones. Okay. Let's continue on. Let's read. Next section is shorter. Let's read just 11 through 14.
And their father Israel said to them, if it must be so now, do this. Take of the best fruits in the land in your vessels, and carry down the man a present, a little balm and a little honey, spices and myrrh, nuts and almonds, and take double money in your hand, and the money that was brought again in the mouth of your sacks, carry it again in your hand, peradventure it was an oversight. Take also your brother, and arise, go again unto the man, and God Almighty give you mercy before the man, that he may send away your other brother and Benjamin. If I be bereaved of my children, I am bereaved.
Okay. So basically what happens here is Jacob gives in, right? It gives in because you have no other choice. It's easy to make a decision when you have no other choice. When you're going to die, you're like, okay, if this is our one shot, let's do this. What else did he send down besides Benjamin? Some gifts. And double money, right? He says not only the money for the first amount of food we got, now you're going to take money for the second amount. He goes, hopefully, probably not, but hopefully it was just an oversight. And so you can say, hey, there was no ill intent on our part. Here's the money from the first one. Here's the money for the second one. And they said they still had some food and a little bit of honey, a little bit of this. And it talks about specifically, at least in Jerry's notes, about the nuts and almonds, maybe something specific from their land that maybe they wouldn't have had as readily in Egypt, something just unique. So they're doing their best to try to placate a bad situation, right, with what they have. And so they're doing everything they can, and again, then in verse 14, turning over to God. Hopefully, God will give us mercy before the man, speaking of Joseph. And again, the way he even words it, or the way it's worded, he may have sent you away with your other brother and Benjamin. So again, Simeon doesn't even get named in this part.
Myrrh, something expensive, that was
Yeah, that's what I've always understood. So they're giving, again, the best of what they have, no matter how little it is. They're giving some very precious things to them. Any other food would have been precious to them at this time. So they're trying to do everything they can to try to, in our terminology, grease the skid so things go their way, right? So they get their sons back.
Like you were saying, in the myrrh, like crashed, and they laid for myrrh, the oil.
Yep.
Jesus.
Yep. It was an expensive thing. He got they brought to him whenever when he was born. The wise men did as a gift, and also I don't know if it was the same type of stuff that Mary. I think they called it in the King James spikenard or something, but it was a type of perfume that she put on his body as well. I don't know if it's the same thing, but it's something similar.
It was offered to him on the cross with the
Mixed with gall.
yeah.
Right.
With the vinegar or whatever.
Right. Okay. 15 through another long reading. 15 through 25.
Yeah, the men took that present, they took the double money in their hand, and Benjamin rose up and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the ruler of his house, bring these men home, and slay, and make ready, for these men shall die with me at noon. And the man did as Joseph bade, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house. The men were afraid because they were brought into Joseph's house. And they said, because of the money that was returned into our sacks at the first time, or we brought in, that he may seek occasion against us, fall upon us, and take us for bondmen and our donkeys. And they came near to the steward of Joseph's house, and they communed with him at the door of the house. And he said, O sir, we came indeed them the first time to buy food. And it came to pass, when we came to the end, that we opened our sacks, and behold, every man's money was in the mouth of the sack, our money in full weight. And we have brought it again into our hand. And the other money have we brought down into our hands to buy food. We cannot tell who put the money in our sacks. And he said, Peace be to you, fear not. Your God and the God of your father have given you the treasure in your sacks. I had your money, and he brought Simeon out unto them. And the man brought the men to Joseph's house, and he gave them water, and they washed their feet, and he gave them their donkeys provender. And they made ready the present against Joseph, and came at noon, for they had heard that they should eat bread.
Okay, so they take the trip and everything that Jacob has given them to take down there to Egypt along with Benjamin. And when they get there, I don't know how they had it in their mind how things were going to go, but they didn't expect what happened. And what happened? They get invited to Joseph's house to eat. They were probably thinking, I hope this goes as smoothly as possible. We just exchange it with some lowling person on the outside, and we get our money, we get our corn, we get to go on our way. But no, they get invited to Joseph's house. Do they think that they see this as a good thing? Oh, we're going to the governor's house? Or they see this as a bad thing? Yeah, because again, everything for them so far in this country has gone bad. Accused of being spies, accused of being liars. Now he's like, okay, the man who accused of all this is asking us to come to his house. So their wheels are spinning about how are we going to again try to fix this and make it where it doesn't go bad, because they believe that they're going to become slaves. That's what they believe is going to happen, right? So what do they do to try to mitigate those damages? They start talking to a guy that what they describe him as the steward. As they're waiting for Joseph to show up for the meal, they start talking like, hey, can we have a moment of your time? When we first took our food home, the money was in our sack. We don't know how it got there. So we brought that money back, and we brought also the money for the new corn. And then how does that man respond?
From God.
And what does he say specifically in verse 23? What does he say?
Glory with you. Do not be afraid of God.
That's a very weird thing to say, right? How would he know that? Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of, right? Because how's he going to know about their God and the God of their father unless he was taught? And who's the only person that could have taught him that? Joseph. So Joseph, again, there's a thing you can just kind of glean up, had been teaching the people, at least of his household, about God.
He also puts them at ease too. It says, be at ease, do not be afraid. And then he tells them, your God and your father, the God of your father have given you the treasure in your sacks.
Yeah. And then he brings out Simeon as well. So again, it shows that, again, that Joseph, his fidelity to God in very tough situations, and even now in a good situation, that it wasn't enough for him to believe. He was telling other people about him. Now, when he was in prison, when he wasn't interpreting dreams, was anybody listening to him about God? Probably. No, he's a slave, a prisoner. What did Joseph always say when he interpreted dreams, though? Yeah, he goes, this is not from me, this is from God. And so you can only think, and this is just me again thinking, like, if a man who, again, a foreigner comes in and there's something special that he does, like interpreting a dream, especially when a dream comes to pass, and he's giving credit to a God. Now, did the Egyptians believe in gods, plural? They believed in a higher power. They believed in gods, multiple gods, right? But when you have this person come in and say, this is from God, and then he tells you what's going to happen, and then it does happen, what is the natural reaction to that? To listen and ask questions. That was the result of miracles, right? What is at the end of John? What did it tell us? What was the point of miracles? That you might believe. So these interpretation of dreams, although it's not like an overt act of a miracle, but when the famine one comes to pass, especially maybe in the 7 years of plenty, they're thinking, we're having good years like always. But when the 7 years of famine comes and everybody realizes that this man, through his dream interpretation, has saved not only our lives, but our country's life, and not only that, but enriching our country because we're selling corn to everybody else, you don't think there was questions? Oh yeah, there was questions. And so at the very least, Joseph is teaching his house, so his servant goes, "You're God, and the God of your father." So he knew about it. He was aware.
But his answer, I had your money, so that things that, you paid me, so that money that you ended up in your sack was not what you brought.
They finally at this point, the other brother gets some relief, right? Because they're all full of, apprehension. But finally, in talking with the steward, they find out, no, that was from us. It wasn't just a mistake. That was intentional. And then here's your brother. And he tells him, be at peace. Everything's okay. This meal is a good thing, not a bad thing. And so that had to be a tremendous relief to them, right?
I just wonder how he treated Simeon in prison.
I bet you he was treated fairly decently. I mean, we're not told, but I bet you he was treated fairly decently.
That's why I said he was probably house arrest.
Yeah.
I don't know about the house arrest because it looks like Joseph, he would have done something that his brother would have recognized. I know this guy.
Right, and that hasn't happened.
So far apart, and he still doesn't know who he is.
Because the only thing we had before is he was speaking to his brothers the first time through an interpreter. He wasn't talking to them one-on-one. So I would assume, again, this is an assumption for whatever it's worth, which is worth nothing, that he had someone that was over Simeon, that was in charge of him, and says, you take care of him, but treat him well, and but he couldn't go anywhere. He couldn't go home, and so, but I don't think he was like in a dungeon, right?
And we don't know how long they went back and ate food, say a couple of years.
Well, we don't know that. We don't know how long that interim time was.
About 2 years.
Huh?
This second trip's about 2 years.
It does?
From the famine start.
Oh, from the start of the famine? Okay. I didn't pick up a time signature in there.
Chapter 2.
Okay. What else in there?
Wash their feet and gave them water and fed their animals and all that. I mean, that's what you do back then for a guest in your home.
Yeah.
More than just people buying, they had to realize they were actually being given to something.
Correct. Like I said, the last two, 3 verses here, what we read, the change of mood for the brothers has to be enormous, right? Again, full of dread and apprehension. Now they're being told everything's okay. They're being the water to wash your feet. They're taking care of their animals. You're going to sit down with the governor of the land. You're going to sit down and get to eat with them. So again, there's a lot of relief happening to them there.
Interesting their attitude there because they go to prepare the present. They don't fumble around when Joseph shows up. Everything's ready when they're there. So they've got kind of order of mind on how they're supposed to present items at this point.
Right. Anything else? Okay. Someone read 26 through 30. Through 30. 26 through 30.
And when Joseph came home, they brought him the present which was in their hand into the house, and bowed themselves to him to the earth. And he asked them of their welfare and said, "Is your father well, the old man of whom you spake? Is he yet alive?" And they answered, "Thy servant our father is in good health. He is yet alive." And they bowed down their heads and made obeisance. And he lifted up his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, "Is this your younger brother, of whom you spake unto me?" And he said, "God be gracious unto thee, my son." And Joseph made haste course, bowels didn't yearn upon his brother. And he sought where to weep, and he entered into his chamber and wept there.
Okay. So when Joseph gets home, again, apparently Joseph's probably out, doing his job, which is distributing the corn and being over that. So he comes home to eat. What do his brothers do? In verse 26. They bow down to him. And he asks them some questions, and they answer them. And then in verse 28, what do they do again? They bow to him after answering the questions. What is that a direct fulfillment of? His dreams. And do you think Joseph recognized that when that happened? No doubt. Do you think his brothers are going to recognize it here in a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't recognize it right now, but they're going to recognize it here in a little bit.
That's just what you did to, they don't realize it now because that's what you did to royalty when they came up.
Right. Right. What? After they give him the present, what is Joseph's questions they have from verse 27?
Is your dad still well?
He asks about his father, right?
And that's your brother that you said you had?
Right. The second one, the first question, actually, he asked about his dad, because again, I don't know the exact time frame, but it seems to be it's 15, 20 years. So Jacob is not young. He's an older man. That's how Joseph refers to him. He wants to know if he's still alive. Do you know how old Jacob is? About right here.
Here, 30.
What do you say?
About 30.
No. Jacob, not Joseph.
Oh.
He's so in chapter 47:9, whenever he finally goes down to Egypt and stands before Joseph, and Joseph talks to him, or stands before Pharaoh, he's 130. So he's somewhere in that ballpark. That's when he asked him, how's the old man doing? He's an old man. They say he's in good health and alive, and it's also unusual. What I found was he asked about him here, and then he's going to ask about him a couple of chapters over and ask those same questions. Is he still alive? Which I thought was odd because he already asked. And I don't think there might have been some time that passed because he's so old. Maybe he's like, is he still alive? Is he still doing okay? But he's concerned about his dad. They bow down to him. He sees Benjamin, recognize him, but he asks a question because he has to ask that question. Is this your younger brother? They say, they confirm that. And then what does Joseph do?
He goes out and weeps.
He's overcome with emotion, and he's not quite ready to give up who he is yet, so he has to go into his own chamber and cry there. Because again, if he'd been crying in front of them, they'd probably go like, what's going on now? Bad things are getting ready to happen again. And so he takes his leave from them. Anything else in that section? Okay, someone read the last end of the chapter. 31 through the end.
Then he washed his face and came out, and controlling himself, he said, serve the food. They served him by himself, and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with them by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat with the Hebrews, that is an abomination to the Egyptians. They set before him the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked at one another in amazement. Portions were taken to them from Joseph's table, and Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of the others. And they drank and were merry with him.
Okay. Joseph comes back in. He's washed his face now to disguise that he was upset and crying, and says, but bring on the food. Does Joseph eat with them? Nope. Hebrews are eating over there. Egyptians are eating over here. Why does it say that happened? Abomination. Because specifically it says not only abomination. What does it say though?
Abomination to the Egyptians.
Right. Okay. Where? This is another possibility. Where do you think that comes from? This is a big. It was mentioned in Jerry's notes. I thought it was fascinating. Possibly with it.
Clean and not clean.
That's what Jerry points out in his note, the idea of clean and unclean. He says that this might be a holdover that the Egyptians still had from patriarchal law, where God had explained to them what was clean and unclean that was canonized in the Mosaical law. So he goes, this might be a lingering thing, like, hey, we can't eat with these people, where we can't eat because they're eating a certain thing, or it might have been a holdover from that. Again, that's a big perhaps, but again, interesting that the Egyptians had that it's an abomination. We can't do that. Even whenever Moses is going to sacrifice the animals, you remember what it said about that to the Egyptians because they were going to do animal sacrifice?
They killed some.
Well, they said it was an abomination. They said that he had to go outside the country to do it if he was going to do it, right? They were going to go, again, the idea of going there to worship and coming back here. Again, just interesting to me in his notes there.
They also could have been like a class of people, maybe, that they thought that they were better.
Possibly. Something as simple as that too, yeah?
Would Joseph be with the Egyptians, or would he be sitting by himself, because he's Hebrew?
It sounds like, to me, he was eating with the Egyptians. It sounds like he was
He took on.
like full-fledged. I mean, whenever Pharaoh put him in second command, even though he was a Hebrew, going back to Potiphar's wife, said, this Hebrew you brought to us has done this. I think that's all gone at this point. It sounds like he is full
Well, Pharaoh changed his name to an Egyptian.
Yeah, I think he's been like
an Egyptian name.
adopted into the culture of the country. How I take it.
He still doesn't want his brothers to know he is Egypt.
And he's still withholding himself before them, right?
In verse 32, doesn't it say by himself? They set on for him by himself, and then for them by themselves with the Egyptians.
He ate by himself in the same room.
He might have-
was at one table with the Egyptians.
And it says the Egyptians ate with him though.
It does say, he said, by his-
This is by themselves. Would his
He was-
position put him at a separate table?
He was.
They served him by himself, then, and them by themselves, them the brothers.
And there were Egyptians.
And the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, him would be Joseph, because he's the only singular person.
not 100% sure. I don't. When I read it through it, I looked closer, but it sounds like to me again that he was eating with the Egyptian group. But there was two groups, right? That's how I took it. But I'll go back and look and look more into that.
Would they have been in the same room?
I don't know sure if they're in a separate room. I think they probably were. To me, again, I don't know. I think they'd have been like setting apart from in the same area. That's how I would have taken it.
It says that they set before him the firstborn according to his diligence.
Because he's we're out of time. Because he is watching them, and I'll just summarize the last little bit. Because again, he does two things unique. He sets the brothers in order. In verse 33, he says the men marveled at one another. What were they marveling at?
The way he put them in order.
He put them in order. How does he
Who is the
do?
youngest?
He's giving them clues now, and then he does something in 34. He gives Benjamin how much? Why do you think he did that? He might have been watching him, right? Because what was the brother's problem? Jealousy, right? And so he gives Benjamin 5 times as much, probably to say like, let's see how they react to that. Let's see because they're talking amongst themselves and they think that he can't understand them. So if they started saying, I can't believe Benjamin, if he starts hearing that again, he knows that they haven't changed. So he might have been watching them there to see how they were going to react to Benjamin and what he was doing with them. Thank you so much. We're out of time. We'll do 44 next week.